Going on, y'all? What is happening? This evening we have a bit of a reaction show, and the topic is going to be on aging and aging in music in particular. We're going to use the hip hop genre to kind of highlight today's topic, being that the current popular topic is surrounding hip hop. But I do want to take a look at two things. One of them is going to be a video from the DMV's own Clipse, and of course it's going to be in light of their latest album release, Let God Sort 'Em Out. And we're also going to take a look at Slick Rick's latest short film, Victory. Now, of course, in the theme of this channel's playlist or series, Concerts Without Sound, which is originated here, if you would like to see more things like this, be sure to check out that playlist. But this is going to be kind of like I'd say a sugar-free version of the real thing, in that we're going to look at these music videos and discuss them without the music. And that's simply just because we want to really explore what we see and understand how we're consuming what we see without the music, because the music can kind of make us feel, but I don't want us to feel things that are nostalgic. I don't want us to really feel things that are going to be comfortable. I want us to kind of take our engineering eye, our nerdy eye, maybe our fatherly eye, our motherly eye, and use that instead of our musical eye. And the reason for that is because, in my opinion, it kind of humanizes the occupation, and it makes it a little bit more relatable to the non-musician. Okay, and it's usually something that takes a little bit of practice, because I've been able to do it because I am a musician. So most of the time when I'm watching a live show, it's easy for me to just look at the live show and pick it apart or criticize it and things like that. But if you're a person who watches a live show because you enjoy, the music, or because you enjoy where the artist is from, it hits a little different. So if you're able to skillfully remove that for a second and then take a look at it, it can kind of open your eyes open to different genres of music and different approaches to music. So if this is interesting to you, make sure you hit the like button for me, because this will show more people this kind of content. And then at the same time, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that way you can catch my latest videos. So let's get into it. This may not be the longer stream, but we'll see depending on how the conversation goes. But first we'll get into Clipse here, and I kind of want to create a conversation around aging in the sense of a music career and then the health of a musician, right? So we want to look at how these musicians will view themselves from one age and then how they view themselves in another. And then I also want to take a look at how these musicians will uh, take a kind of approach to their art form, which will be music videos in this example. And so I kind of want to look at it that way because the two musicians or groups that we're going to look at are from two very different generations, but they're doing the same art form, which would be rapping. In a sense, they would kind of be utilizing similar tropes, similar stereotypes, but how does aging for the both of them differ when they're both releasing music in the same year? So both of these artists are releasing in the same year, and then we may use Gemini a little bit to get some more detailed information specifically about the artists. And then we also get some information about the times that they came out, maybe some of the issues they struggled with or had to overcome. But in general, we want to see, how do these two groups of musicians age from being young musicians to finally being veterans? How do they even view the music industry, and what are they getting from it? And what's their approach to get the results? So let's take a first look. So we have here Clipse, of course. So as you can see, if you've followed them for a minute, they clearly visually look younger. Like they're clearly younger in age, but the kind of like imagery we're seeing here is not, unique in a sense that there's a camera, they out here partying, maybe not even partying, just kind of like shooting a music video. And the concept that we're really noticing here is that there's very little to do with musicality, and it's more so probably about just bars. Like we're just here to show off, that we can rap and what we're rapping about, right? And there's not really a really poignant or obvious point to say, hey, I'm going to be great. They pretty much are already, look, they're driving nice cars and all that stuff. They're good to go. So it's really just a showcase of skill at this point. And for many people, when they see this stuff, if you're not an actual rapper in the sense of like you're not rapping at the level that they're rapping at when this song came out, it would kind of feel like they're just young dudes trying to get it. But honestly, looking at it in hindsight, these are like veterans in this video. So if you were to compare them to like your average musician at the time, they were probably running circles around them from clearly booking shows. But in terms of skill set, being able to rap, flow, write a song, and then, make beats and stuff like that, you have to be immersed to get to the level that they're performing at by the time this video dropped. Now, that's important to point out because when you realize that this is, for most people, their first introduction to Clipse, that's something that a lot of people don't really grasp, because not in this example, but for many musicians that are coming off the street, for the sake, they tend to release music as a product towards the latter end of their, professional career. Like they'll do a lot of live shows, maybe features and things like that. They can rap really well, but as far as dropping like any debut official album, it took for them to get to this point for people to notice. Now, when we talk about aging, for many of us musicians, we may start in our teens or like maybe 9 years old, even. And we would think that period of time is going to be considered or it's going to be valued, but it's valued in a different way. That period of your musical career is valued like the years of being a toddler for a parent. Like for your parent, when you were like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it was awesome because you were like a sponge. You were absorbing things, you were getting good at stuff. And then there comes a point where you got to kind of like apply the things you learn. And so once you start applying them, that's when you'll start to see what works, what doesn't work. But the issue that I see a lot of musicians run into is that in their younger part of their career, they don't get the results they want based on all the things that they're trying. So that's why you'll see a lot of musicians that are kind of like the clips in this video where they'll show up with a video and it's called grinding and it just blows your brain out of its skull because it's amazing. And you can't really process how much work went into it because it's almost like the foundation of what they're trying to deliver. Now, how do you do that at such a young age? Meaning, like, how do you pull that off as a musician in your music career for people's first impression to be the greatest version of yourself, or at least the peak version of yourself, right? Well, I'll try to pull it away from music specifically and treat it more like a character thing. So, what I've noticed is that a lot of people are really, really good at stuff because they do that thing often. So, for example, there's somebody who can do like handstand push ups or something, another person can do backflips. And then you have the Clipse here who can rap really well. The thing that makes all of those people, these groups of people or kinds of people connect and similar is that they repeat the task over and over and over. Now, it took me until probably about high school to realize that because then I was actually playing in a musical instrument. And so when you're playing a musical instrument, your teacher, your coach, professor, or if you play at a church, your music director, whoever's teaching you your instrument, they're going to stress at a point that you practice. And for many people, they'll practice things that they like or practice things that they enjoy. But when you have something that you need to practice, you'll practice that one thing multiple times. And the reason is because you're developing a muscle memory. And what that is a neurological connection from your brain to your muscles. So you'll really see this shine in guitar players, drummers, a lot of very physical musicians, right? Especially singers and rappers and stuff like that. Dancers, especially dancers. So the connection to make here is that your idea of success as a musician oftentimes comes from how far you're willing to go or how many reps you're willing to take it. And so when we look at the clips here, a lot of times when I see rappers that are like, they just come out the gate really rapping really good, or at least writing really good, like they may not be like the best rapper, but they have good songwriting skills. That tells me they have practiced. Now, it doesn't mean that they've practiced, this one song. It means they practiced the skill. And for me, the difference is that when you take the clips out of this song, does the next song sound just as good? Does the song before it sound as good or even better? And that's how you can tell that they're practicing skills and not necessarily just, shows or performances. You usually will see this in dance routines, cheerleading, and usually like synchronized stuff where you can tell which individual only practice certain moves or certain sections to perfect. And then you can see which individuals practice the entire show or the skills. There's almost like probably 3 parts to that, right? But all in all, the key thing is that they were able to master this as musicians early. And this video that we're watching dropped 11 years ago, and we're watching this 2025. So it's probably older than that. We'll pull up Gemini and see. We'll just ask it Gemini. But the idea that you're going to be able to master a lot of your greatest feats early on is not reasonable. But when you see Clipse do it, it makes it possible. And the way it's possible is usually through repetition. And then along with repetition, you have to know what to repeat. They weren't in there just rapping bullshit every day. They probably were actually like studying skills, language, similes, metaphors, storytelling, probably movies, things like that. We'll probably make another video about Currency. He drops a lot of tips on how he develops inspiration and things like that. And he mentions movies often, which I think is cool because you can kind of see how other artists and creative minds come to the same conclusions. But it says the Clip song came out 23 years ago and 2 months, almost 25 years old. That's crazy. Yeah, 2002 right there. There it is. But essentially, that's going to be how you want to envision yourself when it comes to the beginning of your career. If you're I'll give this as literal advice for musicians. Like if you're a young musician, practice the things that you want to be good at as I would say, as your idea of a successful musician. So I'll give a few examples because I've had conversations with different types of musicians that were successful and different types of younger musicians with their versions of success. So one version would be you want to be the musician who can teach, and being able to teach takes more than playing the right notes. You want to be a musician that can be able to look at somebody who has no idea what you're talking about and teach them something. Meaning you can get them to play a song, play a scale, learn a song, or understand a song. And that's really it, just to plant the seed. Because at that point, they'll decide what they want to do with the knowledge, right? You don't want to, tell little Timmy, hey, you're going to learn to play Fur Elise and make him do it. There's no reason, right? But if you want to teach little Jimmy how to play Fur Elise, he has to understand it, and then he has to want to do it. So that's kind of the key thing about teaching. You have to make learning fun and make learning interesting. So if you want to be a musician in your older age, like let's say 50s, 60s, and even 70s, and you don't see yourself playing, but you see yourself maybe teaching or running a band and things like that, you want to be able to make learning music fun and interesting and incentivize it. And there's a lot of ways you can do it that make sense, that help people, that can even probably even, create a couple stars and things like that. But you have to practice those things early in your career if you want to be good at it, or at least excel at it. Another example of this, you can be a musician who is highly skilled. Like you have highly adaptable skills. You can play anything, you can look at anything and sight read it. You can probably, dance to any beat. You can make any picture look cool, whatever it is, right? And it's kind of the same thing when it comes to getting good at rap. You want to get that muscle memory down on how to just hit the bell each time you strike. And that could mean like songwriting. That could mean like you're going to write a song. It may not be a good song, but you're going to know how to make a chorus, verse, bridge, chorus, and then that's it. The idea behind it is that you want to be able to complete a song. This will teach you to be efficient, but then once you do it, you'll be able to hone in a system for yourself to know what works, so you won't make the same mistakes and you'll just get faster, more efficient, and probably even better at songwriting. And so what that'll also teach you is how to understand multiple instruments and their roles, along with how to produce them into making a complete song. Because remember, writing a song is not just putting the notes and words on a napkin. Nowadays, we want to stream it from our phones. So if you can't do that, you technically never wrote a song in our world. So if you want to do that, you have to understand all of that and be able to do it consistently over and over and over again. The greatest record labels, they just have people and systems and departments that help them do this. But if you want to be a person to really understand it and, make the big money when you're 50s, 60s, and 70s, you want to be the person that can mastermind the idea behind it, or at least understand what the mastermind is thinking. So that way you can help out. Another example of this could be that you want to be a musician that has pretty much a skill set that is unique, something that nobody else can replicate. And that's usually seen with instrumentalists. Instrumentalists have a certain kind of opportunity in that they can develop a signature style. Like it's just going back to muscle memory. You can't really replicate what they're doing because they're the bones, they're the space and size and density to be able to make what's happening happen. So for everybody else, you're just emulating. It sounds close, but it's not the real thing, or it looks close, but it's not the real thing. So that's where you'll have to understand how to deliver that result as a musician. So let's say you want to be a guitar player. There's going to have to be a style of guitar playing or a certain way that you play a genre of music that you will have to develop and nurture and maintain in order to make it signature to yourself. Otherwise, you can just, play what somebody else is playing. You ever seen them people in Las Vegas cosplaying other celebrities? You can literally be one of those humans, or you can be one of the humans that is cosplayed. But the idea that you're going to just, be respected because you play the instrument it's honestly foolish. But the thing is that it's understandable. Like for most people, we would see a trumpet player and we'd be like, wow, they're playing the trumpet. But for that trumpet player, he's probably seen trumpet players or heard trumpet players do some things that have inspired him or maybe even discouraged him because of how highly skilled they were. So that's kind of how you want to look at the beginning of your career. These fellas, they went into their career and was like, look, we're already veterans in our lifestyle, but we want to rap. But when we are veterans in our lifestyle, which demands respect, we got to go into rap the same way. So if you're in school for music and you want to do beat making, you want to be a rapper, you want to be a producer, or maybe you even want to play the cello in the local orchestra, you need to go in there demanding respect on a level of delivering on your skill set and delivering on your character as far as showing up on time, respecting people, being able to network and things like that, So you can see all the people in the back. These aren't strangers. They obviously like these two guys and, their music and things like that. So there's a bit of rapport and networking. These are people to them. So you have to understand that early in your music career if you want to master aging. And so next we're going to get into the next video of Slick Rick's victory. Now, for those of you who don't know Slick Rick, Clipse is brand new, so you can figure them out. But for those of you who don't know Slick Rick is actually one of the first musicians I've ever heard from a musical aspect, meaning like I've heard, you've heard the clear classic lullabies and things like that. But when it was like, all right, you should listen to this, the names that came across my little lexicon as a kid was DMX, Slick Rick, KRS-One, and I think at the time was Nas and Jay-Z. But the point I'm making here is that Slick Rick has been around for a long time. And the thing that I've noticed is that for his generation of musicians, there was a point to where they kind of took a step back from music. And it wasn't necessarily, like they didn't want to do music. It was more in the sense of like, it felt like they were cooking, I guess you could say. They were trying to figure out what they wanted to rap about. And so I asked Gemini a quick little bio for Slick Rick just so we can catch up on it and, educate the youth on who Mr. Rick is. But it says Slick Rick, born Richard Martin Lloyd Walters on January 14th, 1965 in London, England. Now that's one point that I actually never knew until probably about 10 years of listening to Slick Rick. For the longest time, I just thought he was just an East Coast rapper. And I never figured it out until somebody asked me. It was like, hey, where's Slick Rick from? And I thought about it. I was like, wow, I really don't know. And I had to look it up. And yes, he's from London, England. And he is an English American rapper and record producer, widely celebrated as hip hop's greatest storyteller. So if you ever hear UK rappers being hated on, these people have no idea who Slick Rick is, okay? So show UK some respect, okay? So let's get a hindsight look into his early life and career beginning. So it says blinded in his eyesight, in his right eye, I'm sorry, as an infant due to broken glass. Rick adopted his signature eye patch, which became an iconic part of his image. His family moved to the Bronx, New York, when he was 11, immersing him in the burgeoning hip hop scene. While attending Fiorello LaGuardia High School of Music and Art, he formed the Kango Crew with Dana Dane. So before we go through that, let's get a quick snapshot at who is Dana Dane. And we're using AI to help us do this. And if you want, let me pop this up for you so you can actually see it. Let's see here. All right, let's see here. It will not bring up Gemini for us. Oh, well. So Dana Dane, born Dana McLeese, is from Brooklyn, and he's an American rapper with a humorous lyrics and distinctive fashion sense. And he began his career as part of the Kango Crew with fellow rapper Slick Rick, whom he attended the High School Music of Art with. While Slick Rick's English accent was genuine, Dana Dane adopted a similar affected lilt in his performances. So, going back to the Kango Crew, it says that his big break for Slick Rick, his big break came in 1984 when he joined Dougie Fresh's Get Fresh crew. Okay, so the key thing to remember here is that he's joined crews early on. And remember where I was talking about sharpening your skills and getting you a muscle memory or building up the repetition. The key thing to remember here is that he went to a school for music and art first. So he probably came out of school with the basics of music understood from music theory and of course knowing how to perform and write and have stage presence. And of course, being in school, this is kind of the point of school. When you go to school, it teaches you how to be on time, how to deliver results, and then how to learn. Now, what we mean by how to learn is that it teaches you to be in situations to solve problems that you may not necessarily come across in your day-to-day life, but you just need to know. So for a school of music and arts, let's say he learned the basic academic stuff like math and science and stuff. But also as a musician, it'll teach you how to, well, he's a vocalist, so it'll teach him how to maintain his instrument, so his vocal health and things like that. Maybe he had vocal coaches and things like that. And then it also teaches him to understand music theory so that way he can network with other musicians. You can talk to a drummer and have a conversation on how to create a song. You can talk to a fellow musician on how to harmonize. And so being able to repeat that process at a young age made probably joining and creating and nurturing the relationship to make a crew like the Kango Crew or the Get Fresh Crew way easier to be successful than the people who did not go to music and art school and tried to do it on their own, which probably made Slick Rick that much more valuable in the crew. alongside his crewmates if they didn't go to school. So it continues to say that their collaborative hits, like The Show and Lottie Dottie, those were actually the few first songs that introduced me to Slick Rick. But those songs became early hip hop classics, with Lottie Dottie being one of the most sampled songs in music history. So again, that's proof in the pudding right there. If you can nurture the skills of, let's say they were nurturing the skill of emceeing early on. Oh no. Let's see here. Hold on. Mic check, mic check. Okay, yeah. If they're nurturing the skills of emceeing early on, they're able to basically understand what's valuable with emceeing and then just replicate it, which probably by the time they made The Show and Lottie Dottie, that was their version of the Clipse grinding. You just come out the gate swinging. But for me, like for a person who was, a kid hearing it, it was like just an amazing song. But for everybody else, they probably knew this crew. This crew has probably been brewing success for a while now. And so as we continue on, it says that Slick Rick's solo success started in 1986 when he signed with Def Jam Records and rebranded as Slick Rick. And so it says his debut solo album, The Great Adventures of Slick Rick, in 1988, solidified his reputation as a master storyteller, known for his smooth delivery, witty lyrics, and distinct character voices. The album featured classics like Children's Story, Mona Lisa, and Hey Young World. All three of those songs are obviously classics, but they all, when you think about them in hindsight, they're very unique in their sound, and they have very, very layered stories in terms of what you can do with mainstream music. For most mainstream songs, they usually tell like one perspective, or maybe they'll tell like one side of a story, meaning like it's a story about revenge. But Slick Rick would usually incorporate multiple characters, multiple perspectives sometimes, and even incorporate multiple lessons within the same story. And so it continues to say that Slick Rick's influence on hip hop is immense, with his unique narrative style, humor, and ability to craft vivid lyrical imagery to set him apart. And that's kind of what I was getting at. Like he would tell stories about, his dating life, some of his jewelry, but the way he would describe it would be very, very interesting in a sense of like being able to fit it into a measure, And so it says that he is one of the most sampled hip hop artists of all time, with his work being used by a diverse range of artists, including Eminem, Beyonce, Mariah Carey, and Kanye West. He became a U.S. citizen, though, in 2016. I didn't know that. All these years he wasn't a U.S. citizen. That's crazy. And continues to be a revered figure in music, recognized for his groundbreaking contributions to the art of hip-hop storytelling. So when we think about that, right, he's basically heralded as one of the greatest hip-hop storytellers. And then when we think about all the years later, this is now 2025, right? Bro's biggest hits were coming out in like 1986. When we're thinking about what he's going to do today, world's greatest storyteller, what do you think he comes up with? Well, he comes up with a 30-minute short film with multiple songs fully produced with the music videos. And so it starts off like most stories where they have to set the scene, right? And he sets the scene and he kind of explains his own story about how he became Slick Rick the ruler, how he eventually became just Slick Rick, and his journey through London and things like that. And in a similar fashion, actually, that's kind of trippy when you think about it. In this image alone, this kind of shows, I want to make sure I'm using the right vocabulary, but this kind of shows the parallel between the ages. These are clearly like, young 20 somethings, maybe teenagers and things like that. And Rick is getting in this room and he's probably seen, life in so many ways that these people probably aren't ready to even realize. It's a weird, only a master storyteller could line this shot up in the very beginning. But to take this image in and to not realize how impactful it is, you gotta have to sit back and absorb it. It happens so fast, but that's kind of what happens with good stories. There's a lot of little details that you gotta go back and read the book again so that way you can connect the dots. But this image right here alone is pretty powerful. So as you can see, the repetition is starting to show itself because it goes beyond music, just like we saw with grinding from the clips. We start to see a definite kind of connection between what he's trying to do, the results we're getting, and then of course we're getting to see how he's utilizing the skill he's always had at the beginning, which was the musical skill. And so it looks like he's starting off with his childhood story, but again, along with the storytelling, you can see how the imagery is connecting to his personality. We're showing his life, people he may know, places he may know, but through his lens of that eye patch. Now, the key thing to understand is that it's intentional. And so for a lot of people, they would look at something like that and think like, oh yeah, it's just cool and edgy. But when you're thinking of a master storyteller, there's things that he's started out with his career going to school for that he's finally implementing that maybe he dreamed of doing. And so the video, or not the video, but the short story is multiple music videos. And you'll essentially get chapters of his life told through each song. It was actually a really good watch when you get the chance. And the key things to really take away are the musical aspect of it, because I believe all the music is original to the short film. And of course, the cinematic aspect of it, meaning how they're using all the mediums of sound and audio, the sound and video to put all of this together. And then lastly, the actual storytelling. Like, what does it all mean when you put the glue together? And that's why it was important to start off with the Clipse grinding video, because with their new release, you can finally see what the possibilities are for what they're doing. And then you can also see how that's going to be compared to somebody who was releasing hits in 1986. So there's levels to what you can do as a musician, but the basics for being a musician come down to this. If you want to be successful, or if you want to be really, really good at one thing, no matter which one you choose, you would have to focus on the repetition of the results. So if you're going to school for music right now, like Slick Rick was, who is now the most sampled hip hop artist in history, who was recently not a US citizen until 2016, you would have to repeat the results you're trying to get every time. But you can also be the Clipse, Pusha T, and Malice, who have never gone to school for music, but still repeated the skills it took to get the results that they wanted. So the idea behind, it's something that I stress on this channel though, but the idea behind criminality, the idea behind being a street musician and things like that don't necessarily connect, because the key thing that makes you a successful musician is your musical skill set. So if Slick Rick decided to not tell his stories through, let's say, rap, he could have told his stories through beat making. He could have told his stories through dance. He could have found his way through the multiple mediums we have through music. We have people doing the same thing Slick Rick is doing with instruments instead of their voice. So there's ways you can get this done, but you have to have the intention to be able to repeat yourself and pull off the result that you're looking for over and over and over and over again. So that's the key thing that we're going to stick with here as far as the message for aging as a musician. If you're an older musician and you're trying to catch up, the key thing is that you're going to have to, just like any older person who's getting in the gym, you're going to have to put in the reps. And if you're a younger person and you feel like you're not going fast enough, then you have to make sure you're pulling off the reps, but also getting the results that you want, which may mean you just need to put in time. It may just take time. So if you enjoy this conversation, make sure you hit the like button and make sure you subscribe so you can see the next live stream of a late night at Dames. But that is it for me, y'all. I'm gonna see y'all and I'm out. Peace.